What is a contingency? Well, a contingency is a condition that must be met in order for a buyer to purchase their new home. And the contingency would be that their first house must be sold before they can purchase the second house. So if they don't sell that first home, then when they go to buy the second house, if the first house is not sold, then they can't finance, or they either finance or pay for that second house. And so it gives the buyer a way to back out. Now, there's a lot of different terms in a contingency and how all this can play out, but I'll give you a couple of examples and thoughts on how I've seen this play out, and a different perspective from a buyer versus a seller and how all that can look. So first of all, if you were a seller and I were at a listing appointment at your house and you said, I want to downsize, I need to move closer to my kids into town, out in the country, and I want a smaller home, but I have to sell my country home in order to buy the city home, then what I would do is I would say to you, okay, so here's your options. You can put your house on the market and we can try to get it sold, but let's figure out if there are a lot of houses on the market that sort of meet the criteria of what you're looking for, so that when your house goes on the market, we can hurry and try to find one of those properties that would really meet your needs and that's within your price range. If we do kind of a search for the new house and there's a lot of options for that seller, then there's a possibility that it could work out. We get this house under contract, we ask for a longer closing, maybe 45 days instead of your typical 30. The second that this house goes under contract, we kind of start the search going a little bit, we look a little more detailed than we have been looking. And then once we get past inspections and the buyers can no longer back out of the sale of that first home, then we go and we put another one under contract. We can close them both on the same day, or this one can close and then house number 2 can close the following day. But we work all those details out among the agents and the buyers and sellers of all the properties. And then hopefully you can get your house under contract or get it on the market, get it under contract, go find a new home, and we can make all that happen within a certain period of time. I had some people, they were a sweet couple who had kind of a unique property, and the husband was very convinced that I could not make that happen. He's like, you got to sell one house before you can buy a new house. And I said, yes, that's right. But in your situation, I think we're going to be able to do it. They had a lot of options. They had a lot of new construction homes that they potentially could buy. They had some pre-existing homes on the side where they were looking. So they really had a lot of options. And I felt pretty confident that when we got their first house under contract, they would be able to go find another house, and we would get that house under contract and it would work out just right. Well, that's exactly what happened. We got their house under contract. We got past the inspections. We had to negotiate some stuff on their house. We had to deal with a roof and some other repairs, and it was a little bit of a complicated situation for a minute on the sale of their house. But then once we got past that option period, we went out and we found the perfect home, which was a brand new construction house. The builder was amazing. He worked out some details for them that would have made the house even more perfect for them. And it was awesome. And so it all worked out just right. We closed the same day. They sold one, they bought another one, and I think we had a little bit of a lease where they could stay in the house until they could get moved and get it really clean and all that stuff. So I think maybe they had like a week where they could stay in that house. But they closed on both and it all worked out perfectly. Now, another situation where you can have a contingency might be where you're a seller and you know you have to sell this house in order to buy the next house. And so we could put this house on the market, or we could not put the house on the market, and we could, like I talked about before, we put it on the market and then we went and looked for a house the second it was under contract. You could not put it on the market, and if you don't have a lot of options for the house that you want to buy, then another way that this can happen is we can look for the new house. we can find the perfect house and get that house under contract and ask that seller, please allow us 45, 60 days to get this house under contract and closed so that we can buy your house. A lot of times people do not want to put their house on the market until they find the right house because they really don't want to move unless they find the perfect house. And so they may not have very many options in their price range or in their location or whatever. And so in those situations, we need to go to the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, we really want to buy your house. Will you please let us put this other house on the market, see what we get? We're going to price it to sell. You know, the agents may be communicating back and forth and talking about the price of the house and, you know, do we think, what are the days on the market? How quickly will it sell? And we're all kind of shuffling around and communicating really carefully to make sure that we think that is a good situation for everyone, for the new house owner and the house that you're currently trying to sell. So there's a lot of things that can happen there. Now, sometimes you could have that situation where the seller says, okay, I'll let you try to sell your house. So go out there, put it on the market. Let's make sure you price it right. And we're all talking about all that. And then once we get it on the market, it does not sell. It doesn't. It just sits there. And so let's say it's a 45 or 60-day contingency for that first buyer to be able to sell their home in order to buy the second home, and that 45 or 60 days passes and they have not got their house under contract, much less sold. So at that point, then the first buyer goes to the seller and says, hey, I do not have my house under contract yet. And of course, this is all through the agents communicating with each other. I don't have my house under contract yet. Will you give me a chance to put it on the market a little bit longer? I'm going to drop the price. I'm going to do some extra marketing. I'm going to redo the pictures. I've painted the bathroom, you know, whatever. And the seller has the option to say, yes, I'll give you a little bit more time, or no, I won't. I'm sorry, but I've got to get my house sold. And so I can't wait on you anymore. So a contingency is a situation where you have a house and you have to sell that house in order to buy another house. The seller of that second house that you want has to agree, and it gives a certain amount of time for a buyer to be able to sell their house in order to buy the next house. And if they do not sell it, then they can back out and they're not locked into that first house, as long as you do everything within the terms and the confines of the contract and in a timely fashion, along with all the deadlines and everything involved in the contract. So that's what a contingency is. I hope that helps. Hey, how you can help me is like and subscribe and share this if you have somebody you think it would be helpful for. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye-bye.